Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a really pretty wild story from the 2000s. We're talking about that time Houston hip hop royalty kind of crashed headfirst into 80s Japanese video game history.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. We're looking at the Namco versus Lil Flip lawsuit. It's this case that honestly sent a huge ripple through the music industry. Basically taught everyone that even a tiny sound effect from Pac-Man, yeah, that could cost you millions if you didn't get permission first.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack how these two, totally different worlds collided legally. We need to get into the weeds of sample clearance, the huge money involved, and also this kind of moral angle about brand image. It all wrapped up in this, $10 million dispute?
$10 million. It's serious stuff.
Okay, so let's get into it. How does a track that literally makes a young independent artist a millionaire, how does that end up sparking this massive federal lawsuit from the company behind Pac-Man?
Well, it's almost a textbook case, isn't it? Independent success, hitting a major legal wall. And I think to really get it, you have to understand who Lil Flip Wesley Eric Weston Jr. was at that moment.
Right. His background is super important here. Born in Houston, 81, made his name as a battle rapper, a really good one. But what was different about him, I think, was this business sense he had early on. He wasn't just waiting around for a major label deal.
That's the critical point.
Yeah.
He'd already made serious money, millionaire status on his own terms. Signed with Sucker Free Records way back in '99, started his own label. I mean, this guy built an empire before the big distribution deal came along.
Which is amazing, but maybe that independent structure, while it gave him freedom and wealth, maybe it also meant the legal checks weren't quite as buttoned up, especially compared to what a major label might have had in place from day one.
That seems to be the crux of it, because when his single Game Over just exploded, I mean, it pushed the album You Gotta Feel Me to platinum. That huge success, that visibility, ironically made it a prime target when Namco heard those samples.
Okay, so let's set the scene for the collision. You've got Lil Flip riding high on this massive hit. And then you've got Namco America, the video game giant, the creators of Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man. These sounds everyone knows.
Right. And the lawsuit itself, filed September 2004, federal court, Southern District of New York. It was laser focused. It said, look, Game Over uses these really distinct sounds from Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, classic arcade sounds. And the big problem, no license. Zero permission sought or granted.
And Namco didn't just go after Lil Flip, the artist. They also sued Sony Music Entertainment, Sony BMG back then. Why bring the big distributor into it like that?
Well, that's pretty standard practice in these copyright cases. Sony BMG was distributing the album, profiting from it. Legally, they're seen as having a duty to make sure everything's cleared, all the samples are legit. They're the quote-unquote deep pocket. Often, the distributor ends up carrying the biggest financial risk because, well, they usually have more money to pay out if damages are awarded.
And the way Namco framed it, it wasn't just, oops, you forgot to ask. They claimed willful copyright infringement. That sounds serious.
Oh, it is. That word willful is legally loaded. What's really interesting here is what it implies. By alleging willful infringement, Namco was basically saying, you guys flipping Sony, you knew this was our stuff, or you just didn't care, you acted recklessly. And why that matters legally, it potentially allows for much, much higher damages. Statutory damages can get multiplied, sometimes massively. It turns up the financial heat considerably.
So suddenly the whole music industry gets this memo. Even a blip, like a sound effect from a game. If it's recognizable, it's protected IP. It's not just about melody or lyrics anymore. These sounds count big time.
Precisely. This case really hammered home that copyright protects unique sounds just as much as it protects a song's composition. If you can identify it, you need to clear it, period.
And the price tag for not clearing it was eye-watering. That initial demand really reflected the seriousness.
It really did. Namco came out asking for $10 million. From Sony BMG and everyone involved, that number wasn't just plucked out of thin air. It was a signal, a deterrent, saying, our sound library has immense value, and we will protect it fiercely in this new era of digital sampling.
Wow. $10 million bucks just for skipping clearance on some game sounds. That's a lesson you don't forget. But, okay, the money part is huge, obviously. But then there's this other layer, right? This is where it gets really interesting. Beyond just the legal copyright stuff, Namco had moral objections.
Yeah, this is probably the most unique part of the whole dispute. It wasn't just a technical IP fight. Namco explicitly raised issues with the content of the song Game Over.
So they weren't just saying, pay us for using our sound. They were also saying, we don't like how you used our sounds.
Essentially, yes. It boils down to brand integrity. Namco pointed to things like gun references, drug talk, profanity in the lyrics, stuff they felt clashed fundamentally with their image.
Why would that matter so much to a game company, though?
Think about it. Namco's brand, especially with Pac-Man, is built around being family-friendly, wholesome even. Their worry was that having their iconic sounds linked to lyrics about, street life, drugs, violence, even if they got paid,
Yeah.
it could tarnish that image they'd spent decades building. It could dilute the brand.
Huh. So Namco wasn't just a creditor here. They were acting more like a guardian of their brand's reputation, kind of vetoing the association.
Exactly. And this really threw another wrench into the works for artists and labels. It showed that getting sample clearance isn't always just about writing a check. It can be a negotiation about context, about suitability, about brand alignment. Even if Flip's team had gone to Namco beforehand offering money, Namco could have just said no based purely on the song's content clashing with their corporate values.
Right. That adds a whole new level of complexity, doesn't it? It means clearance might depend on whether the rights holder approves of your artistic message.
It does. It turned a copyright issue into something much more nuanced, a clash of values, really. And it showed that successful clearance might require more than just budget. It might require finding IP owners whose values align with yours, potentially limiting creative choices.
So this massive clash, 80s arcade meets 2000s hip-hop, $10 million hanging in the balance, moral objections. How did it actually end? Did it go all the way through court?
Thankfully for everyone involved, no. It didn't end up in a long, drawn-out trial. They settled out of court in August 2005, so less than a year after the lawsuit was filed, which, in legal terms, is reasonably quick.
But we don't know the final number, right? The settlement details are sealed.
Correct. That's very common. The exact financial terms weren't disclosed publicly, but significantly, both sides described the outcome as amicable, which usually signaled that they reached a compromise everyone could live with, likely involving some payment, and definitely avoiding that huge $10 million judgment threat.
Okay, so connecting this specific case back to the bigger picture, what was the real takeaway? The lasting impact of Namco versus Lil Flip.
I think it served as this really potent, multi-layered warning sign for the whole music world, a real wake-up call. You can probably boil it down to three key things that really shook the industry.
Yeah.
First, it completely blew up the idea that the source of a sample mattered in terms of protection. Video game sounds, which maybe some people thought were, less serious or fair game compared to traditional music samples. Nope. This case made it crystal clear. They are fully protected intellectual property.
Okay, no more gray areas there. What's the second thing?
Second, it just massively underscored how critical comprehensive rights management is. For everyone, the artist, the label, the distributor, you absolutely cannot treat sample clearance as an afterthought. It had to be done up front. Every single element, no matter how short or seemingly insignificant, needs permission.
Makes sense. And the third impact?
Well, the third one really highlights the vulnerability, perhaps, of the super successful independent artist. Look, Lil Flip showed incredible hustle and business smarts building his own wealth. Truly impressive. But that very independence meant he potentially lacked the giant built-in legal safety net that a major label provides from the start. His independent success ran right into the brick wall of strict federal IP law.
Yeah, it's like his business acumen was tested by legal compliance, and compliance won.
Exactly. The lesson became unavoidable. Entrepreneurial drive in music is fantastic, but it has to be matched with really rigorous legal groundwork. Otherwise, as that $10 million demand showed, the financial risks are just astronomical.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the bottom line for us today? The Namco versus Lil Flip case basically drilled home this fundamental truth. It doesn't matter where copyrighted material comes from, a classic game sound, a tiny drum loop, whatever, it needs clearance, proper licensing, no exceptions.
Yeah, it was that moment where sheer entrepreneurial talent and success got a hard reality check from the legal system. Structure matters just as much as the hustle.
So here's something to think about moving forward. We're now entering this era where AI can just churn out music, right? Often trained on massive data sets that probably include everything from obscure loops to, yes, classic video game sounds. How do artists navigate that? How do you ensure the sounds your AI tool generates haven't inadvertently sampled something that could trigger the next big lawsuit, especially when the origins of those AI-generated sounds are getting harder and harder to trace? That challenge of proper clearance, it feels like it's only getting more complicated.